Yes, thank you very much. The session is being recorded. You can join in through EWEI platform, invite your friends and families, and you can equally drop your questions for our speakers through the EWEI platform. Our topic once again is women as game changers in peace building. And our speaker is Safiya Ibn Garba. So her bio will be read now. Safiya Ibn Garba has more than 22 years work experience with expertise in project and event management, girls and women empowerment, gender, peace building, facilitation and learning. Starting off in her home country, Nigeria, Safiya worked extensively within civil society to advance causes for girls and women at both the national and state levels. Safiya founded Empowering Women for Excellence Initiative, a non-profit organization with a mission to provide multi-sectoral interventions for the empowerment of girls and women in 2008, where she is known for her dynamic interpersonal skills and unmatched expertise in mentoring. She led a state-level coalition on gender, being a member of the Civil Society Licensing Office Advisory Committee of the National Assembly, which is Nigeria's highest level lawmaking body. She has advocated to and worked extensively with state and non-state actors to promote girl-child education in northern Nigeria through the development of multi-year sector strategies with development partners, and continues to champion the fight for equal rights and opportunities in her home country. Safiya has more than 10 years of experience working in the business sector, specifically in events management and information technology, alongside her work in the nonprofit sector. Safiya is also the Director of Institutional Learning at Generations for Peace, Amman, Jordan. She started volunteering with GFP in 2008 and has previously served as Pioneer Programs Officer, Programs Manager, and Lead Facilitator. Her current duties include overseeing the mentoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, and capacity strengthening and training units. Safiya is a member of the International Association of Facilitators and is endorsed facilitator. The International Society of Female Professionals as a member. She's also a part of the Boardroom Africa as a member. As she's also on the Frontiers as an expert. And in 2022, she won the Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders as a reader. The Women Experts Network Foreign and Security Policy. She's also a member of the Session Lab community and leads the Empowered series as a host. In 2020, Safiya commenced her doctoral studies with the UN-mandated University of Peace, Costa Rica, where her research focuses on peace-building efforts, leveraging the agency of women in violence-affected Northwest Nigeria via participatory arts. She holds a master's degree in sustainable peace in the contemporary world from the University of Peace and a bachelor's degree in computer science from University of Benin, Nigeria. In 2020, Safiya was awarded a Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellowship for her contributions to empowering women and gender reconciliation. Safiya also won the Apostle Hayford Alil Humanitarian Award from the prestigious Community and Human Rights Awards 2020 by CETEL CSR in Action. Safiya featured in PeaceCon 2020 as part of the panel on women building inclusive peace innovative approaches from Nigeria and the United States. She is the moderator at EWEI's Developing Resilience and Growing from Setbacks for Women Leaders and a speaker in the Galaxy for Peace launch of the Teach Peace Early Models in 2021. Safiya is also featured on Global Reconciliation's International Women's Day 2021 interview. Safiya most recently featured as a speaker at the 8th Peace and Conflict Resolution Conference 2021, organized by Tomorrow's People organization on her now published paper, Tending to the Devastating Wounds of Nigerian Girls and Women. Safiya is additionally featured on 10,000 Swamp Leaders in a podcast titled Multitasking Master, Safiya Ibn Garba, leading in 2 organizations for social change. We welcome you, Ma. Thank you for being a part of this session, and we look forward to your presentation on women as game changers in peace building.
Thank you very much, Rachel. That was a very long bio, so thank you for that. I feel like you were taking the time to read a bio, so I wouldn't have to say too much in the session. So thank you very much. Thank you to the EWEI team. We've been working so hard behind the scenes on getting things done for the conference. I'm very proud of you. And okay, we already have people raising hands, but maybe we can wait a bit before we start to take questions, right? So yeah, I want to say thank you to the EWEI team. Even my dog was barking in the background. So if you hear a dog barking, you know who it is. And you know, everyone is obviously joining in the fun. So we're just gonna go straight into it. Can you confirm that you can see my screen, please?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, so women as game changers for peace building or in peace building. And as I've been introduced, I'm Safiya Ibn Garba. I'm a Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellow. I also work with Generations for Peace and Empowering Women for Excellence Initiative. And it's an honor for me to be here as part of the speakers as well at EWEI's first international conference. Today, we're going to go through a few things to talk about and critically look at this topic. I want to say thank you for those who have already put in a lot of input in the Q&A section and the discussions that have been going on there already. I think they're amazing. They're really good. It's good to see that we're already thinking about these things, and especially on the issue of peace, because we know not only is this extremely important, but it's something that we're facing in Nigeria particularly. It's really, really a challenge. And just literally everywhere we're seeing so much more conflict. So we're just going to take a look at this, and there'll be time for questions. I try to give credit, all the photo credits as we go along, and you also find references and links. So whenever you receive this, you'll be able to go to the references and just click on them and read more about the topic or whatever it is. Now, this first photo shows women from Kenya in a demonstration, and it's a multi-faith demonstration. They're calling for a peaceful election. This was back in 2017. So this was in downtown Nairobi. And it shows, look at that, look at the passion, look at this. It's like, you know what? We need peace this time. So let's take a look again as women as change builders, as change agents. What we'll be talking about will span these general topics or the index. First of all, the problem statement, gendered experiences of violent conflict, instruments, case studies, recommendations, and Q&A. I'm just going to look in here. Okay, I was going to look in here to see if there was anything. So this is a kind of overall what we're going to look at, okay, this evening. Moving along, let's start with number 1, problem statement. Now, the problems related to violence and conflict are not, in fact, for me, I don't think you can count them, because everyone's experiences of conflict, and particularly violent conflict, are really, really diverse and very, very impactful. Let's put it that way. And yesterday was the International Day of Nonviolence, and we had Mark speak, we had Abdulaziz speak, and they talked, in fact, both of them talked about the cost of conflict and particularly violence around the world. So again, I want to echo what they said, that conflict costs the world more than $14 trillion a year. Now, Think about how many zeros that is to 14. And that's the equivalent of $5 a day for every person on the planet. So if we were to divide the money for the money that's spent on conflict or violent conflict, if we were to spend that money on a person, every single person on the planet, we would get $5 a day. And I don't think we would mind that at all, as opposed to having violent communities. So research shows that peace brings prosperity, obviously, right? When people are living together. Again, conflict is natural, it's necessary. We're not saying there will not be conflict or differences of opinion, but the issue is, then what? Can I just check in? Are we, yes, we're recording, sorry. So research shows us that peace brings prosperity, lower inflation. We're experiencing just unbelievable inflation in countries like Zimbabwe, in Lebanon, in Nigeria as well. And just a 2% reduction in conflict would free up as much money as the global aid budget. All right, think about that. I'm leaving you with that for 1 second. That if only we reduce 2% of what is currently being spent on conflict and violence, that we would free up as much money as global aid. And we know that global aid comes from, multilateral agencies, nation states, UN, whoever, governments, foundations, and so on and so forth. But if we just reduce the money we spend on violent conflict, we would have the equivalent of global aid, the global aid budget. And imagine what we would do with that. Now, I give you a moment to let that sink in. And I want you to also look at the photo and look at this woman. This woman was affected by the Bosnian War, where usually official figures are never the real figures, where more than 100,000 people were killed during the bloody conflict. And this is another, if you want to read about it, go ahead and read about it. These things are quite interesting. And I remember Abdulaziz saying yesterday that we don't seem to learn from our mistakes. So the fact that genocides and certain kinds of violent conflict are still happening right now, it's a big problem. All right. Before I go on, I want to just ask you in the chat or on Hoover, wherever you are, to tell me one other thing that you think is a problem when it comes to violent conflict. Like, how has it affected you personally, for example, or what have you observed is a problem or risk factor related to violent conflict? And I'm just checking the chat box to see. How has violent conflict affected you, or at least you observe that this is one of the problems that's related to violent conflict? Waiting for you in the chat. Should I be looking at the EWEI chat, moderator? Sorry, the Zoom chat.
Yes, ma'am. You can
Okay.
look. Yeah, the Zoom
Right.
chat.
Okay, so I'm waiting on you to tell me what the effect of violent conflict has been on you, or that you have observed at least. So here we're talking about economy. Communalism, absolutely, yeah. Where, well, I mean, I don't know how many, how many people prefer the system of government, but this is something that, yeah, it's kind of very, very, what's the word? It's a bit scandalous as a government system. What else? Yeah, displacement, had to leave our own house. Oh, wow. You see, that's such a personal thing. Imagine you took the time to build your house, you have your own home, but then you have to move because of violence. Yes, the academic calendar taken backward, absolutely. And if you look at, I mean, even particularly in Kaduna State in Nigeria, some schools had to be closed because of the threat of violence, threat of abduction. Poor access, yes, poor access to quality education. Malaka says, Violence in Palestine against Palestinian people is making me deeply sad, and it has been hindering personal life at all levels. Absolutely. When you live in a constant state of violence all around you, how are you expected to go on with your life? How are you expected to do that? So I will come back, just keep throwing them into the chat box. I will come back to your contributions because we're still going to look at two other examples. So that's economy, right? Now let's look at mental health, okay, and some other kinds of gender-based violence. So conflict can result in higher levels of GBV, gender-based violence against women and girls, obviously, including arbitrary killings. So sometimes people just get killed. You just hear, oh, people came into someone's house or something, or they were walking from X to Z and they got killed. Torture, sexual violence, and forced marriage, trafficking as well. Women and girls are primarily and increasingly targeted through the use of sexual violence, including as a tactic of war. And I'm really, really, really so sad to see how it seems like our civilization is going backward. You know, when you get to a point where we as humans claim to be civilized, but at a point, it seems like we're going back when you go so low as to use sexual violence as a tactic of war. During war and refugee situations, women are most likely to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's what is known as PTSD. It's a mental health issue. Anxiety, obviously another one, depression, another one, and increased homicide rates. So being killed, just moving from point A to point B. And this is from CHR and Borgen magazine. And it just reminds me of the story of someone I know very well. She's quite close to me, and she had to flee war. In fact, she fled about 3 countries because there was war. I used to joke with her and say, are you the one bringing the war to those countries? And in her home country, when the war started, she had actually just given birth to a child a week ago. So imagine that woman walking, and they had to walk to the border to be able to escape. So they were walking to the border, and another woman so gratefully helped her and took the baby and said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead of you with the baby. Whenever the baby starts crying or needs to be breastfed, I will wait for you. And then you come breastfeed and I'll go on. And that was what they kept doing. And these women were walking in the midst of bullets flying and bombs being thrown. This is real life. This is real life. Okay. And imagine what we are doing to ourselves, causing people to suffer like this. I'm looking at some more examples. So Jelaya says we were temporarily displaced during the Sharia crisis of 2000. Yes, that was a big one in Kaduna, Nigeria, and I cut across, I think, more than one state even. Starvation, absolutely. You know, food becomes, it just, you can't get food, or it costs so much. I remember reading, as part of my studies, reading about how during the Nigerian Civil War, some of our citizens had to eat like reptiles, lizards, and things like that because there was no access to food. And then Abba says women are the primary caretakers of children and elders in every society. They serve as the best responders. They have a unique set of challenges absolutely related to peace. And we're going to see that, to peace building and security. Okay, so this is a question. So I'll come back to this, Abba, okay? Let me keep going. So that's problem statement number 2. And then the third one is conflict obviously causes death and injuries. I mean, that's obvious, right? It's a no-brainer on the battlefield, but also there are health consequences from displacement. So someone mentioned displacement and the breakdown of health and social services, heightened risk of disease transmission. So for example, during the genocide, Rwandan genocide, dead bodies were being thrown into the rivers. And some of these rivers were being used to feed into dams for clean drinking water. So that became an issue. And then health and social services. If you notice, in quite a few countries that are currently going through violent conflict right now, hospitals are targeted, schools are targeted. So whether it's in Yemen, whether it's in Afghanistan, whether it's in Gaza or even the West Bank, whether it's in Ukraine, you see these things and they shock you. all right? Because even those places that are considered sacred, let's put it that way, are being attacked. And another thing is information systems, they also break down during conflict. So, you know, you can't get the TV, you don't know what to believe. You hear all kinds of things. And, you know, it's always said that bad news travels faster than good news. So you will most probably get bad news and misleading information earlier than good news before we get before things change. Can I ask, please? I'm a bit different from Philip, so I prefer my questions at the end. So just keep them in the Q&A box, and I will certainly come to them, okay? So yeah, and it just so much uncertainty. You know, it's like when there's a coup d'etat, you just see someone on the screen saying, I've taken over. Okay. And you don't even know what's happening. You're afraid there's a curfew, and all of these things are problems in the cause of violent conflict. And there's just uncertainty in the magnitude of mortality and disability. So this is another problem statement. And like I said, these are not the only problems or risk factors related to violent conflict. There's so many, and thank you for sharing your personal experiences as well as, you know, those that you've observed. Okay, so we're gonna go now into the gendered experiences of violent conflict. I don't know, this is not the first one I wanted to show. Okay, I'll just keep going. Now, I want you to take a look at this photo. This is the global estimate of girls and women in internal displacement due to conflict and violence as at the end of 2018. Imagine that children between 0 and 4 make up 2.6 million of the percentage of women and girls that are living in internally displaced. That's even within their own countries. From 5 to 14, normative years, 4.6 million. Just imagine that there are 4.6 million girls and adolescents walking around internally displaced. 15 to 24, schooling time, you know, growing, becoming an adult, 3.9 million. These numbers are at 2018. So I can assure you that they're higher now. You can see it, you can feel it yourself. 25 to 59, the peak of life. And, you know, you're doing whatever it is you want to do. You have a job, you want a family, you're running your business, you're working, whatever it is. 7.9. In fact, that's the largest demographic, the most productive group. And 7.9 are internally displaced as at 2018. And then 60 plus, elderly, a bit elderly, you should be starting to rest at this time, taking things a bit slower, some retirement, some not, still working, still good to go, but also internally displaced. I give you a minute to let that sink in. Now you looked at it from those kind of visuals of people. Now I want you to look at it on a worldwide scale on a map. And the darker the orange, so you can see the orange, the darker the orange is, the more intense the issue is, or the higher the numbers. And look at those hotspots. Look at Colombia, almost 3 million, 2,932,000. Look at Nigeria, 1,093,000. This is at 2018. DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, 1,543,000. Yemen, 1,153,000. Afghanistan, 1,264,000. Syria, 3,052,000. This is sad. This is very sad. And as I was, you know, I reflected on this, and I always see that it's countries that are in real violent conflict, with the highest ones are those in the global south, or otherwise known as developing countries. And these are resource-rich countries, resource-rich. I learned in the DRC, they have the highest concentration of a particular precious metal in the world. And yet they have not had peace for God knows how long. Look at Yemen. Oh yeah, I think I read Yemen before. Sudan, 1,036,000. Ethiopia, you know what's happening, Tigray and all of that, 1,327,000. Checking the toolbox in the chat box. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Now, we know that many conflicts, and particularly this is about violent conflict, okay, are led and started and led by men, okay? But women, and mostly women, experience conflict as civilians. They're exposed to different risks. Whether women stay in their homes or they flee, they suffer all kinds of things. Economic, health, we've looked at some of them, decreased security because of the conflict. Now, according to the UN Population Fund, UNPF, women represent a staggering 80% of the world's 34 million refugees and IDPs. So these are more recent numbers. 80%, what's left? What is left? In many cases, women are forced to flee from their homes, separating them from their support networks, whether that's family, friends, or whatever it is. And they must travel long distances for food, water, firewood, medical care, whatever it is they need. And they're at risk of attack, exposure to sexual violence, or injury from landmines. So just like the story I told you of a friend of mine, right, who had to walk to the border and in the midst of bullets flying, or landmines where people have planted landmines for 50s, 60 to hundreds of years, and then they come back and you know the violence ebbs down, negative peace or even positive peace, but those landmines are still there, and there is always that threat that people will be disabled or killed through landmines. They're parts of the world, and I've seen certain areas like that. You dare not go and step your foot in there because you might be blown to bits by a landmine. And you know how women are. They want to go, they want to take care of, they want to, and in the course of it, they just might die. So gender-based violence also spikes in post-conflict societies. There's a lot of anger, there's PTSD, there is, there's tension. All right, there's hegemonic masculinity that comes into the picture. And because of the general breakdown of law and order, anything goes. There's proliferation of arms, so availability of arms, social family structures are broken down, and gender-based violence seems normalized all of a sudden. And you know when everything breaks down, it all breaks down. So there are high levels of violence and also increased militarism. And this is what OHCHR is telling us. So again, I've shown you two visuals, right? I've shown you visuals of women displaced. I've shown you from, more of an individual kind of age group range. I've shown you from a country view. And I'm also sharing with you about different experiences of women. Now, you may say, is it only women? Of course not. Everyone is affected by violent conflict. How are men or boys and men affected by conflict? And this is why we talk about gendered experiences of violent conflict, because it's not just girls and women. Yes, they suffer the most from statistics, but we know that customarily men are combatants. And in conflicts, they are the majority of casualties because they're the ones that are out there on the front line or wherever. And they're the ones also missing in action. So when you hear things like people are disappeared or combat casualties, men. Now, in cases where women are widowed by conflict, that traditional male authority, which may be the gender norm in that particular area, they try to reassert where that traditional male authority is absent. Women are obliged to take on roles that might have been dangerous, arduous, difficult. Something that both could have taken on. They have to take it on themselves. And they have to fend for their families. They have to engage with authorities that are usually generally male dominated. And often for whatever reasons, but they have to engage because they want to secure basic services for their families. So if you look at any, for example, where there's a distribution of aid in, so by a humanitarian body, they're distributing aid, you can see that those who are stronger, it's almost like survival of the fittest. Those who are stronger are the ones trying to push their way through. And, you know, sometimes it's too much for girls and women. Maybe the mother is sick at home and the girl, a teenage girl or younger, has to go and get the aid. So in post-conflict societies, males returning to civilian life after everything that has gone on resume the position of heads of households. Okay, and it reflects a widespread assumption that responsibilities taken over by females, even the cause of violence, are temporary. That is not always the case, and it shouldn't always be the case. What if a male combatant, head of the, you know, the father of a family goes to war, he's not killed, but he gets disabled, all right, or sorry, becomes a person with disability. And then he comes back home and there are things he cannot do. Even the pressure on him is a problem. Forget about her, the pressure on him. Oh, you have to do this, you're the man of the house. And we just talked about it in the session before now. There are things that are gender neutral. They have nothing to do with who you are. Whatever responsibilities, it's fine. With Aisha on day one, she talked about how as a woman, you have to be self-sufficient. You don't go, I mean, go get married and then sit in the house doing nothing. You have no source of income. When issues come, all of a sudden, everyone, there's panic. All right, so men are affected as well because of the expectations upon them and the fact that they are the largest casualties of violent conflict. Now, the photo on the left breaks my heart so much every time I see it, because this is a child soldier. This is a boy child. And he has been made to and forced, basically, to be part of the war. And this one is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I personally know people who have actually been recruited as child soldiers before in war. And today they reflect so much and they want to do so much to change that. But what are we doing to our boys? If we're engaging them at this level in these kinds, what is a child doing next to a gun? That's the question. Maybe in a horror movie, it's fine. But what is a child doing next to a gun here in war, in violent conflict? You are creating monsters, people who will suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, those who will be, you've heard of veterans from Vietnam and other wars, high rates of suicide as well. What are we doing? And then on the right, there's such a thing as sexual violence against boys and men in conflict. There is such a thing. It's not as rampant, of course, as with the girls and women, but it does happen. Men and boys are forced into things they ordinarily would not want to do under normal circumstances. So even trafficking affects them as well. So the genders, and I'm focusing on just two major genders, two genders, they are affected differently, and some cases similarly, but in some cases direct. It's just so horrific what we're making our people go through. And I speak to policy makers, I speak to decision makers, I speak to politicians, I speak to all those who are fueling violence. Enough. I mentioned instruments, and I'm sorry I'm so passionate about this, but that's how it is. Instruments, and I didn't mean musical instruments. I meant policies. So a synonym for them is like, you know, global instruments or policies or laws or things that have been ratified by different countries to deal with certain issues. I was just checking the chat box. Okay, now one of the key instruments or policies, in fact, it's in the name, the landmark one on women, peace, and security is UNSCR 1325. So United Nations Security Council Resolution, UNSCR 1325. It was ratified in 2000, 31st October. And landmark first one that really focused on the role of women in peace building. And it affirms that peace and security efforts are more sustainable when women are equal partners in the prevention of violent conflict, the delivery of relief and recovering efforts, and in the forging of lasting peace. So this is a landmark boom thing that just came up, and yes, we finally acknowledge that women have a huge part to play in this whole issue of conflict, violent conflict, peace building, recovery, even delivery of relief efforts. There's a tendency for me maybe to trust a certain gender over another, even when there's violent conflict. And I just remembered an example I wanted to share about the gendered experiences of conflict. And that was the fact that sometimes, we're coming to it. Okay, I'll come to it. 1 second, I just want to check something. Okay. All right, I knew, yes, we're going to come to that. I'm so passionate about this, you can see. Okay, so 1325 highlights the importance of women as key actors, not afterthoughts, not second thoughts, just key actors as much as anyone else. And this is the landmark resolution that kind of kicked off a whole set of resolutions in terms of women, peace, and security. When if you see WPS, this is what it means: women, peace, and security, and the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda. After this one in 2000, a whole range of others came into play. The most recent one is UNSCR 2493, and this one was ratified in 2019. And what it does is it strengthens the existing normative framework for women, peace, and security. And it's specifically focused on UN approaches and interventions. So it encourages the UN to develop context-specific approaches. So again, there's no one size fits all. I think Hannah said that in her session. Mark said it, Abdulaziz said it. It's very, very important that when you intervene, it has to be context specific and context sensitive. And what it does, it's also asks the UN urging member states to ensure and provide timely support for the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women in all stages of the peace process, whether it's prevention, management, whatever it is. Women must be included. And this is the latest instrument on women, peace, and security. I believe there are 10 at this point, or 10 or 12, and this is the latest one. So if you want to read more about it, the links are there. Enjoy. And I just love this photo. It's a beautiful one. All right. So the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda, all right, again, part of the instrument is, it has 4 pillars. And the pillars are participation, protection, prevention, relief, and recovery. So under participation, it says to increase women's participation in peace and security, including in peace processes and security institutions. So I think you're going to see that soon. You'll see the photo of a women peacekeeper. That itself can even change dynamics in a conflict zone. So there's need for participation at every stage. The second pillar is protection. So protecting women and girls from gender-based violence, admitted violence, and in humanitarian situations. So specific attention to the protection of girls and women. This also includes prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse, and even by aid workers. Okay, so there's a need for protection all around. Then prevention. So preventing conflict by engaging women in conflict prevention and transformation. So even before conflict becomes violent, engaging women, and this is, multi-track diplomacy thing, bottom-up approaches, and just as we were speaking yesterday about grassroots, innovative way for grassroots peace building. Then preventing gender-based violence in fragile settings. So not even waiting for things to escalate into war crises or violent conflict, but refusing to normalize gender-based violence. And there are some countries, quite a few in South America, where, girls and women are at such high risk. Also in South Africa, high risk of gender-based violence. In fact, the numbers, particularly from South Africa and South America, are staggering. And then relief and recovery, gender mainstreaming in crisis response efforts. Okay, so making sure that you're sensitive to what different genders need. Ensuring that women are given meaningful roles in the creation of crisis response plans. So they have roles as well in the planning of response plans. So not just prevention from the beginning, but even also in response. Okay, that women are engaged. And these are the 4 pillars for the Women, Peace, and Security agenda. And it is key for every country, every community to localize this. And I'll come to that as a recommendation. I just want to show you 2 very interesting things. Case study, Sri Lanka. Now, in no way am I putting down the motivations or interests or positions of any of the parties. I'm just sharing an example about how women can be on either side of peace or violence. And of course, they have reasons for that to happen, right? But for the example from Sri Lanka is about the Tamil Tigers. And this is one of the soldiers then. She's one of the soldiers. You can see the other is also a woman. They were very much part of the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Tigers, as they were known. And they were there. They're in Kilinochi in this photo. And yeah, they can be part as well of the violence at any time. So never underestimate. Yes, we know that majority of women are more of civilians or victims, or survivors, sorry, but they can also be on that part of it. Just checking my time. Okay. Another example is actually in the Rwandan genocide, where women were encouraging. So there's the genocide of 1994, huge genocide, millions, over 1 million, I think it's millions of people that were killed, Tutsis and moderate Hutus. Women were encouraging men. They would literally stand by and encourage the men to kill or to rape. And this was something that had very deep roots from history. So it was such a mess. And every time I go to that memorial, I have goosebumps because you can see the names of people, you can see photos of people, you can see shoes, you can see dolls, you can see things that were hammers that were used to crush children's skulls. You can see them. What are we doing? So women can be part of combatants as well. Now, on the other hand, they're also big drivers for peace. So in the case of Liberia and even South Sudan as well, for the Liberians, this war, bad, bad, bad. The actors decided to gather, all men, decided to gather themselves and talk about things, peace processes, and there were no women. And the women got fed up and they went there and they were demonstrating and they said, enough, enough. And the women contributed to this peace process that lasted. The example I wanted to give about women in violence, look at the example even of Nigeria and how we're facing extremism, violent extremism. And you find that even young girls are being used. They're someone straps on a suicide bomb jacket on them. They have no idea what they're doing. And they're sent into a military checkpoint or in somewhere, the market or whatever, and they blow themselves and other people up. So whether coerced or not, girls and women can be involved as agents of violence or as agents of peace. And I'm sure you remember, and probably even all the countries that are represented in this conference, there must have been a time when women stood up for something. And sometimes women have to do it very, 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 how do I say, in a shocking way. So I remember, again, part of my studies, I was reading about the Aba women riots. And how women, someone can confirm it for me, how women undressed and went in public to protest forced taxation by the colonial government. So I'm sure someone can confirm this for me. They can be a part of everything. So, and what is this fact from research? Some of you have already mentioned it in the chat box. When women are involved in peace processes, peace agreements are 35% more likely to last at least 15 years. Now, if you know this, why on earth are you not including women? They are game changers. Imagine you not including them. You have less likelihood for the peace to last. So not just for the peace to be established, but for the peace to last as well. And this is considered a very good number, 35%. And I bet that with time, this will certainly increase because women will gain more capacities, more courage, right? More whatever it is they need. They need to be capacitated, to be able to do more in peace building. And that's why we have to support the Women, Peace and Security agenda. We have to. Now, this is a UN women peacekeeper. And look at that. Just look at the girls around her. That's cute. What are the recommendations before we start to take questions? Number one, all these UNHCRs, UNSCRs, and all different kinds of agreements and people saying this, we talk too much as human beings. Let's localize these things. Localization is of paramount interest and urgency. Enough of talk. Enough. It's time to act. We have to localize. I remember when the Child's Right Act globally was, being ratified, and some countries were really struggling with it. Nigeria was one of those countries. Different states had different issues ratifying or localizing it because, tradition, because of all culture. But we're speaking of the rights of the child. Same way, UNSCR, whatever it is, 1320, 2025 or 2493, whatever it is, we need to localize them. We need to make sure that they're being that the women are being not just included, but that these, it's so easy. I apologize, I have the cold spray in the background. It's so easy for us to put laws in place but not enforce them. And it's the job of everyone. It's a collective effort. That's why you're watching the TV, they say, see something, say something. Okay, it's a collective effort. It's not just government's work. It is our work in our homes. It is our work at work. It is our work wherever we find ourselves. So let us localize these resolutions as well as any other instruments that can help us achieve more peace and a culture of peace in our communities. So that's the first recommendation. The second one is that we need to engage women, and it's very, iterative and kind of repetitive from the Women, Peace and Security agenda and the pillars. But we want to ensure that we're engaging women because they're advocates for peace. I would even say natural advocates for peace, and peacekeepers, relief workers, mediators. Women are naturally, I would say, peace builders. They have certain skills. And with Philip just before now, we talked about the wiring of the brain and the fact that our brains are wired differently. So there's some things that, different genders or sexes, would be more inclined to. Now, what else? Engage women, because when women partake in peace processes, we just saw the data, the research, they usually focus on reconciliation, education, transitional justice, and economic development. They also speak of for excluded groups and the need to identify underlying causes of conflict. So I'll give a typical example in my office. Whenever there's an issue, I don't want to just say, okay, it's fine, everyone, it's cool, everyone just go and sit down. No, I want to get to the bottom of the issue. Let's address the issue, and that takes processes. And not many of us human beings like processes. So you have to be committed to processes. You have to increase and support the participation of women in decision-making. This is even more of a, it's more of a wider issue, because the more women are involved in decision-making, the more they are represented in decision-making and policy-making, they can put in the input useful things, so that it even prevents other things from happening. It prevents structural violence. It prevents sexism. It prevents racism and a lot of other things, institutionalized issues that are affecting communities. So decision-making, community development, and peacekeeping. We want to see more women in peacekeeping roles. And then applying gender sensitive peace building. So we've kind of said that before because we've looked at the gendered experiences of both girls and women, boys and men. A gender sensitive approach implies that you recognize that peace building, state building, and conflict are gendered processes in two senses. Women and men are affected differently by conflict, and gender roles shape state building outcomes. So you may think that, oh, relegating her to the kitchen is not a big deal. You are denying the society of someone who's productive, and you're keeping her somewhere. Oh, that reminds me, the other room. The other room. So she belongs in the kitchen, the living room, and the other room. How disrespectful. And how do you expect a nation to move forward if that's the belief? All right. I've talked a lot. I'm just going to read a little bit from the chat box before we take questions. So it's time for question and answers. I think we stopped here, starvation. Yeah, Red Abbas. Simon says women can actually give more if given a better and conducive environment because they're always prone during crises and war. Absolutely. Women by nature are peace builders. Abba also says, do you know that gender-based violence is a phenomenon deeply rooted in gender inequality, and continues to be one of the most notable human rights violations within all societies. Gender-based violence is violence directed against a person because of their gender. Both women and men experience gender-based violence, but the majority of victims are women and girls. Absolutely. In fact, there's a saying that women's rights are human rights as well. Sometimes it seems like they're not the same. They are the same. Which confirms men are also affected, not compared to women. Michael Jones refers to the Aba Women Riot, very, very landmark. And as part of my studies, I was also going through the kinds of things Fumilayo Ransom Kuti did. And, you know, women, Queen Amina of Zazo and all these women, Margaret Ekpo and so on, like amazing, amazing work. And Uche says he watched a movie, can't remember the title, started a serious war, yes, between countries. This same war came to end by the intervention of another woman. She brought all parties involved together. She went through the wives of the parties involved. If only you know how influential women are, you will treat them right. I'm telling you this. Women are goal-getters, Margaret says, that once you engage them, they fear not, the task will be done perfectly. I think you're biased, Margaret, but I agree with you. Women really, I believe, are go-getters. And we see that. And I would maybe a little bit of a PSA here, but that's why at EWEI, we're so focused on mindsets and building capacity. Because if you do not believe, if you go by what you've been told, gender norms and so on, and gender roles, you will be limited. So you need to go beyond, the gender roles. Samson is asking, what is women, peace, security? So I mentioned this already in the presentation, so you'll be able to refer to it. There's what is called the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. So WPS, it's about the resolutions and the actions taken to promote the role of women in peace and security. Do I leave it for the moderator to take the questions, or how would you like to do it?
Okay, so we have more questions that were sent in on the WUVA platform. So we can go through some of them. Someone asked, can gender equality prevent violent conflicts? Can gender equality prevent violent conflict?
So I would say yes and no, because that will certainly help, but it doesn't mean it will not like eradicate violent conflict, because violent conflict comes from a difference, or violence comes from what you do with conflict, what you do with different interests or different positions and so on. So even when we're nowhere near gender equality, but if we get to that point, it will greatly reduce it, because women would already have been involved in all processes. So it will definitely support and help. But you know, conflict is conflict. What you do with it is the question. You go and transform it and make it productive, or do you resort to violence? So that would be my answer.
Okay, so another question, what can be done to change the cultural view towards women?
I think it's better for the audience to answer this. If you could answer this on the chat, that would be great. What can we do to change the cultural view of women? And realistically, right? And I think, personally, I think things like this that we're having, where we have discourse, we come together, we're not afraid to address things. There's some things that people call undiscussables. We're not afraid to confront one another peacefully, peacefully. And we're not afraid. We're just open. But I mean, I'm interested in seeing the answers to this. Like, what do you think, audience participants, what do you think can affect or help with the cultural views of women that people have of women? I'm quite interested in, yeah.
Yes,
So
so
we can go on, yeah.
while you keep your answers coming on the chat, we continue with the questions. Someone asks, what difference does it make if women are included in the peace process?
Okay. One of my slides showed research that stated that 35%, if women are included in peace processes, that there's a 35% chance that peace will last at least 15 years. That alone, aside from everything else we've seen, aside from the changes we've seen, look at the Aba women riots. They stopped the forced taxation on women in the East. So all you need to do is look around and see what happened when women were involved. Just see what happened. That should be proof. That is what happens when women get involved. And by the way, I mean, not related to conflict, violent and conflict, but do you know that in the COVID-19 pandemic, the countries that were run by women had much better results in terms of lower rates and treatment options and all of that. Good examples are Jacinda and a few other things. So we can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So how can I, as a woman peace builder, be a game changer for peace building at a low or mid level?
Great question. So for this, it's very, very, very important that you realize your worth. That is extremely important. You realize your worth as an individual, as a woman. And then I think even for many of us here that are on this call, you're already doing it. You're affecting change. You're bringing about change in your homes, in your where you work, or your business, or other things. You already are bringing about change. Okay. And the other thing is, I would say, get more and more capacity. Get more capacity and be ready. Be courageous. Be ready to speak. Be ready to speak out when it's necessary to do so. Okay. And I mean, for me, nothing beats learning, education, and information to enable you act. So be hungry for knowledge. And as you do that, you also learn different strategies about how to apply peace building as an individual at whatever level you are. You can make a difference. As long as you do something, you can make a difference.
Okay, so another question. We want more women as game changers. My question is, as a man, what are some of the methods to use in encouraging women that feel left behind to join the race as game changers?
That's a great question, and I wish the person asking this question was at Aisha Yusufu's the panel discussion that included Aisha Yusuf, Yusufu, F.A. Johnson, and Hawa Evelyn, professor. I think that one thing is to always support, and like I said, for me, one of my comments in that session was, we need to be beside each other. No one needs to be in front of the other or behind the other. We need to be beside each other. So encourage them, help women believe in themselves because they have so much potential. I would say be an understanding partner, brother, father, whatever it is that you are, be an important one. Be one that they can count on. And I would also say that you have to be secure in who you are as a man. You have to be very secure in that, because some of the things that men do are actually society influenced, right? There's what they call hegemonic masculinity or toxic masculinity, where you're expected to act a certain way because everyone expects that of you. But that is not the way. That is not the way to act. Go by your conscience, what you believe, what you think should be the right thing to do, and go by that. So I would say, be a constant support system, be there for the women in your life, let them know that you believe in them, celebrate them, and believe me, what you get in return will be multiples of that.
Yes, so we have more comments in the chat box. Mendy says, localizing and internalizing the UNSRC 1325 and 2463 is key to actualizing women's roles in peace building. Lots of sensitization and advocacy campaigns needed.
Agreed. Yes, absolutely.
Margaret says, we are all created to do something positive. You can be the change you want to see in the society. Start that change. So Simon is talking about how educating and sensitization can assist in helping women to be peace builders. Uche talks about enlightenment, training, equality, equity, kicking against gender norms and stereotypes that places women at a disadvantage. Abba Abdul Kader says, awareness and giving them the equal rights as expected. Margaret Edache says, community awareness, empowerment, advocacy, and education. It's a collaboration and not a competition. So thank you. Those are the comments. You can keep your comments coming. You can keep your questions coming. Join the WUVA app. You can continue to interact with our speaker on the WUVA app. Thank you so much for being a part of this session, Ma. We look forward to having you in subsequent sessions. So this is Women as Game Changers in Peace Building. We are live on Facebook and equally on the WUVA platform. So tomorrow, our session will start at 11:30 West African time, 11:30 a.m. West African time. Our poll will be coming up immediately so that you can evaluate this session. Thank you so much for being a part of it. In the comment section, chat box, you can drop how you are feeling presently. How do you feel? How was the session? Did you enjoy it? In one word, how do you feel? How was the session? For me, it was empowering. So you can, while you take your poll, you can equally drop how you feel about the session today.
Can I just ask Rachel that any questions in the Q&A be on the Hoover app so I can answer them there?
Okay. Yes, please. All questions should be taken to the Hoover app so she can respond directly to you there. Thank you so much. Drop your questions on the Hoover platform. Any other inquiries you'd want to know about women as game changers when it comes to peace building, you can drop it on the WUVA platform. Once you're done with your poll, you can drop a word to describe how you feel about today's sessions. Kindly fill the poll. It's important you fill this poll so we know how the conference is going, so that we know the changes to make and how to make it enjoyable for you all as participants. So please fill the poll, it's important. Thank you very much. Tomorrow's session starts by 11:30. You can join us via the WUVA platform or live on Facebook. You can drop your questions and comments on the WUVA platform, where you can interact with all speakers and participants. Thank you very much. Drop your comments. Michael Jones says the session was electrifying. Margaret inspired. Jalila invigorating. Thank you. You can drop your comments while we round up. If you have any further questions, you want to catch up with participants or speakers, you can move forward to the WUVA platform if you're not there already. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. West African time. Have a great day.
That will never turn away. When it seems all your dreams come undone, we will stand by your side, filled with hope and filled with pride. We are more than we are one.
More music at NinjaWhite.com. the rain as the clouds go gray. The thunder roars and the earth sings. The season's just beginning. Sunlight it hides as the clouds make way. For the pouring of my blessings, I will not be afraid. I see it now, I understand, I know. So I embrace it, dance. In the rain, it's for my feet to grow. For every prayer and every seed I've sown, Lord of the harvest knows I'm reaping back 100-fold. The land is green, it's green, oh, oh. The land is green, it's green. Can't you see? The harvest is ready, 'cause the Lord of the harvest told me so. It's green for me. It's green
More
for
music
me.
at NigerWide.com.
Standing alone can be a heavy load, but my vows I won't be breaking. Though my heart is aching, I got a word and I won't let go. It's your will I'm seeking, so I keep on believing. I see it now, I understand, I know. So I embrace it, dance. Once again, it's time for me to grow. For every prayer and every tear I've sown, Lord of the harvest knows I'm reaping joy 100-fold. The land is green, it's green, oh, oh. The land is green, it's green. Can't you see? The harvest is ready, 'cause the Lord of the harvest told me so. It's green for me. I thought it was over, thought you were done with me, but we're just beginning. Whoa, my life is a journey. I will walk with you, I will go where you want me to. Yes, I will go.
More music at NigerWide.com.
It's green, can't you see? I can't see all the harvest is ready, 'cause he told me so. It's green and it's all mine.
More music at NigerWide.com.
It's like I missed a shot. It's like I dropped the ball. Damn, I'm sorry. It's like I'm on stage and I forgot the words. Damn, I'm sorry. It's like building a new house with no roof and no doors. Damn, I'm sorry. It's like trying to propose and I ain't got the ring. Oh, damn, I'm sorry. But girl, I've apologized a million times before. I've apologized a million more. So here it comes again for all the wrong I've done. Girl, get ready, babe. Here's 1,000,001. Girl, this is my sorry for 2004. And I ain't gonna mess up no more this year. I'ma take this one chance and make it real clear. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, sorry, in case I don't tell you. Tell you December, I'm sorry. It's like staying out all night and way too much to drink. Damn, I'm sorry. It's like you change your hair and I don't say a thing. Damn, I'm sorry. It's like we're falling fast asleep with no kiss and before we hit. Damn, I'm sorry. And it's like I forgot your gift on 02, 14, 03. Damn, so sorry. But girl, I've apologized a million times before. I've apologized a million more. So here it comes again for all the wrong I've done. Here's 1,000,001.